All right. Hi, and welcome to today's Ms. JD Chats 1L hiring programs. My name is Laura Blado, and I am a Ms. JD volunteer. I'm also a 2L at William & Mary. Today, we have a panel of experts from some of the US's major law firms to talk about their 1L hiring programs, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
This is Joanna Fuller at Fish & Richardson.
I'm Manu Gayatri from Latham & Watkins.
This is Rose. I'm an attorney with Munger, Tolles & Olson.
And this is Maya Hazel. I'm the Global Director of Diversity and Inclusion at White & Case.
Wonderful. And would you mind just giving a brief overview of your 1L program that you have coming up in summer 2017?
Sure. So I can talk about the Latham & Watkins 1L Fellowship. We actually started it a couple of years ago, and our 1L Fellowship is actually comprised of half of your 1L summer being spent with Latham at one of our US offices, as well as half of the time being spent with one of our clients, which is a great opportunity for 1L students to be able to see both sides of the legal practice. So we found this to be extremely helpful for people to be able to see not only what they will be doing as associates, but what clients are actually anticipating of them as their counsel on a go-forward basis. So you get this amazing experience your 1L year, and then you're able to actually hone in on the kinds of things that you'd like to do on your 2L year, depending on your experiences during your time with the client, and then have sort of the full-blown 2L summer experience as well. So best of both worlds is how I like to describe this 1L fellowship program.
Great.
I can go next. Munger's 1L program has been around since 2004, and we've just started this year offering client placements as well. In previous years, we've offered, and this is still on the table, a half of the summer at a public interest client. So we have a number of 1Ls who spend half the year, or half the summer rather, at Munger, either in the San Francisco or the LA office, and then have their opportunity to choose between a public interest organization that they've selected or one of our clients who we have relationships with, who then offer to sponsor the 1L for the second half of the summer. And I'll just say the application's on our website at www.mto.com for people who are interested.
Great. Joanna, do you want to jump in?
So we don't have arrangements where you'd work in-house, but we have, we do a lot of pro bono work. So while you're here, if you express an interest in that, we'll always give you some pro bono projects. So in the past, we've had people do adoptions and help out with a lot of immigration cases. We do a lot of that work because it's federal court, which is mostly where we exclusively work. But it's a lot of it's your interest. So Fish & Richardson is patent focused. And if you express an interest in doing other kinds of pro bono work, you can kind of dictate that while you're here.
Great.
And I'll round us out. At White & Case, we are in the second year of our program. We have our 1Ls join our typical summer program. You're treated just like a summer associate in terms of assignments and access to various opportunities. We are hiring 1Ls in our New York office, DC office, LA office, and Miami office. And we do also have an in-house client component where you spend a minimum of 2 weeks, more likely 3 weeks, with one of our clients. Last year, our fellows spent time with Adobe and Hilton, and this year they'll continue at those clients as well as at Hewlett-Packard and Pfizer.
Great. All right. So many applications for 1L firm programs require a diversity or personal statement in lieu of a cover letter. What makes a diversity or personal statement stand out?
I have strong opinions on this, so I'll say it. I'm also on our 1L hiring committee, so I've been doing this, I've been on the committee for 3 years, so I've seen a number. And I think it is incredibly important, and other folks can disagree with me, but I think it's incredibly important to talk about yourself and what makes you special, and not just the values of diversity. And, you know, we all share those values and they're great. And that you're bringing those values to the legal profession is a little bit of a given. So you absolutely want to talk about what makes you special, whether that's your background or an experience that you've had. And Munger casts a very wide net, you know, economic diversity. There are all sorts of things that make people diverse. But I think it's really important to use that to share something that isn't obvious, or that we can't just sort of assume you have by the, you know, virtue of the fact that you're applying to the program. So I think that's important.
I completely concur. I think that one of the things that always jumps out at me at the best applications are the ones where I feel like I know the person and their background and their life by the time I've finished reading their essay. And that really does make all the difference in the world. So I think really putting your heart and soul into it, showing us what your commitment to diversity has been and how it's impacted your life, whether it's impacted you to go to law school or in other facets of your life, and just really showing that at the forefront is what's very much important to us. And we also take a pretty broad swath on what is diversity, first generation professionals, you know, all sorts of things are really accounted for. So I think that just making sure we know you as a person by the time we're done, highlighting your leadership qualities, highlighting those kinds of things are unbelievably important.
Great advice.
I agree with everything that's said, and I'll also add that we like to see it be very well written, perfect looking, no errors. That always catches your eye when you're an attorney and it sticks out. So take that time to go through it again.
I would agree with all that said, and also add that we should see a demonstrated commitment to promoting diversity and inclusion in your community, in your school, in your life.
Great. All right, so should 1Ls apply as soon as possible over Christmas break, or should they wait until after they receive their first semester grades to apply?
Students can apply now and follow up with grades when they're available for us.
The same process we take. Our deadline is January 11th, and often grades don't even start rolling in until after then. So we do encourage people to start applying as soon as they feasibly think that they have the time to do so and put the effort into the application, and then they can follow up with their transcripts.
Agreed.
All right.
And just to add to that, it's better to apply early. So it doesn't matter if you know those grades in, send it in, add that later. It also reminds people that you've applied. So maybe the first time they didn't look at your application, now you get the grades in, you get a second look. Good plan.
That's good advice. So how important are grades in your selection process?
So I'm happy to take this one. I think academic achievement has always been sort of a marker that people go by for many, many things, and it's no different for a 1L fellowship. These are pretty competitive fellowships, as I'm sure most of the folks on this panel can attest to. We get many, many applications, and there are fewer and fewer slots for 1L jobs. And so academic achievement is definitely, you know, something that we focus on, but the full package is what's important. So if you just have academic achievement but haven't shown the commitment to diversity, as was noted earlier, or there's nothing else to show that you really care about, you know, increasing diversity in the legal profession, I think that sort of detracts from the grades. So the overall package is unbelievably important to make sure that we're seeing all different facets of the person and the applicant.
The thing I'll add is that Sometimes 1L fall semester, and I'm sure if people are in finals now, it can be a real shocker for people, especially if you've grown up in a family where you don't have lawyers and law school is just sort of a new thing and taking law exams is a new skill. So if you're worried, especially if it's, you've gotten your 1L grades back and you're worried about that, I would say, 1L first semester grades aren't everything. You will get better. And you can explain that and you can sort of make up for that if you have a strong undergrad transcript. Likewise, if you have, a year where something bad happened or you have a reason that there were sort of bad grades in 1 year of undergrad, or you worked a full-time job or whatever it is, don't be afraid to explain those things because it really is the full package.
Great.
And we see ourselves as providing an opportunity for you to get great work experience that will make you competitive in the process of applying for 2L positions. So while grades are obviously important to us, we want to know that you have the intellectual capacity to handle the workload, particularly when we're sending you to clients. It's really not the be-all and end-all. And if you perform well in an interview and we see a certain level of maturity and a strong work ethic that you've demonstrated in other ways that may not necessarily show up in your grades, you definitely have a strong opportunity with us.
Great. All right. So what traits do your most successful applicants possess? You guys have all mentioned the full package. So what are some of the traits that you look for in completing that package?
I can start. I would say someone who's self-motivated, really achievement-oriented, open-minded. We are a global, very diverse firm, and we look for people who are interested in that type of experience. So open-minded, highly collaborative. And I'd say one thing that I think is a bit of a distinguishing factor is someone who is entrepreneurial. If they've shown that spirit, that bent, that openness, because that is sort of our vision and what we look for in our recruitment efforts at law schools.
Great.
I think that one of the hallmarks of Latham culture is teamwork and collaboration. We don't believe in headquarters or profit centers or anything like that. So we're looking for very like-minded people who want to work in big collaborative groups and really want to be a part of a team that looks to find the best solutions for our clients and not necessarily focuses on just their own career. And so I think that when people have that collaborative spirit, it sort of shines through, and we can tell, especially during an interview process or based on things that are on people's resumes. And so that's really what we hone in on and look for. And obviously self-confidence never hurts. But we do like nice people here at Latham. So arrogance is not necessarily something that we sort of gravitate towards. So I think a lot of self-confidence, but also being on the humble side helps a ton.
Great. All right.
I agree with all of that. And I was going to just add that one thing I often hear from attorneys who've interviewed people is whether they would want to introduce a client to that person. So that's sort of like a visual test. Is this someone that I feel confident is going to say the right things, is going to have the right attitude, is going to impress a client?
Great. So what are some of the common pitfalls that you see in applications? We've talked a lot about what can make an application stand out in a positive way. What are things that make an application stand out in a negative way?
I think you need to do your research. So, know if you want to be, trying to think of an example of a type of law we don't do. But if you want to be, a bird lawyer, look for a law firm that has that. And if you want to be a corporate lawyer, do a little bit of research into what sorts of corporate law that firm specializes in. Talk to professors and career development folks who know the firm and know what sort of traits they look for. And so you can really target, if you have a cover letter, you can really target it to that firm, and it looks like you're interested in that firm in particular, not just a summer job, more generally.
All right.
I would agree definitely with that, because Fish and Richardson, again, is like really a specific area of law, and I can't tell you how many times an applicant comes in and says they're not sure what they want to do. They're still thinking. We really don't, we're not excited about that. I mean, maybe you're going to come and tell us one thing and tell someone else another thing. That's probably okay as long as you can pull it off. But we all have egos. We want to hear that our kind of law is the best. So you can go ahead and stroke that ego and tell us how great our firm is.
2 tracks for our 1L fellowship. One is our general track where you can get placed into any of our U.S. offices, and then we have very similar to Fisher Richardson, an IP only track. So if you are applying for one versus the other, especially on the IP track, I think it definitely helps to have a real interest in that track, and those are only in our Silicon Valley, Chicago, and DC offices. And so I think, making sure that you're ticking the right box, because our general track will allow you to be a part of our unassigned program, similar to every other summer associate, and try any practice area that we have, but not our IP track, which is very focused.
No. All right. So what does the interview process look like for 1L applications? I know that I'm familiar personally with the 2L summer process, so I'm wondering how it's different from that, since it's in the middle of the semester and with 1Ls and not involving necessarily on-campus interviews.
So we skip the on-campus aspect. We do that obviously by learning more about you through the application process itself. So you don't have that 20-minute teaser interview. We actually probably learn a lot more about you before we bring you back for a callback than we do at OCI. But we do have a very typical OCI style callback interview that we do for these positions as well. So you would go back to your office of choice and meet with 5 to 6 attorneys before an offer is made to you with respect to the 1L fellowship.
Ours is similar. And the only thing I'll add, this connects back to the common pitfalls that we were just talking about a minute ago. If your school has an opportunity for you to do practice interviews, I know when I was in law school, I went to Stanford, and I know they offer these for 1Ls. If you've never interviewed at a law firm before, there is a little, some firms have different processes, but there's a little bit of a typical interview. And so if you have the opportunity to do a practice one, I highly, highly encourage you to take advantage of it, or just to get a 3L, somebody who's been through OCI, to give you some tips. Because you don't want to be super nervous going into that interview if it's your first law firm interview ever. You want to know what to expect and what to project. So that's a little bit of a tangent, but I wanted to make sure I mentioned it because I think it's important.
I'll jump in on that point. I think it's critical. I do a lot of speaking with law students about the importance of interview skills, particularly competency-based behavioral interview skills, to really answer questions in a much more sophisticated way that gives firms a real sense of who you are, and that you know what direction you want to go in or think you want to go in your career. So if interviewing is not your strong suit, and even if you feel it is, I highly recommend that you do a mock interview, particularly when you're interviewing for a 1L position and haven't had a lot of experience doing these types of interviews.
And you can ask, if you get a call back, whoever's calling you to give you that call back, you can say, what's your interview process like? Do you do competency questions, or is it more casual? You can, how many people am I going to meet with? Can I get their names ahead of time? You can ask all of those things to prepare, because preparation is, obviously so important for everything we do.
Very true. So this leads me right into our next questions, which the first question I have is about how an applicant can stand out in a positive way. So in addition to setting up a practice interview and researching the firm, making sure they know who they're talking to, what else sets a good interview apart from, or a great interview apart from a good interview?
So I think that when you get to the point of the interview about, do you have any questions for me? And the questions sort of seem very rote, as though you don't really know very much about the firm at all. I think that's often a turnoff. So doing a little bit of research, figuring out if you can find out whether it's a rotational program at that firm or a complete unassigned program, or you know you're going to be hired into a specific group, and talk about the process of the kind of work you're going to be doing as a 1L fellow or a summer associate. I think just asking well-educated questions makes a huge difference.
I also think it's important to show that you're interested in the law. And as a 1L, especially after your first semester, you may not have a ton of legal experience. I mean, maybe you've, worked in a law firm before coming to law school, you were a paralegal, or you interned at a DA's office, or whatever it may be. But if you have, then you should talk about that and have something, substantive and interesting to say about your experience there. If you haven't, you should make sure you can dig up a nugget, something from a class, some problem that you found interesting. If it was a writing assignment, really dig into the, what about the law interested you, at least for Munger. That's really important, because ultimately that's what you're doing. And if it's not what you want to do, and you sort of you aren't excited by the law yet, then that's not a great signal that you're going to be a happy lawyer.
You should really be participating in a conversation, and that's going to reflect your maturity. I always try to remind students that it's a two-way street. We're choosing you, but you're also choosing us, and you should go into the interviews with that in mind, showing real curiosity about what we do, as well as some knowledge gained beforehand, hopefully by talking to one of our lawyers or one of your fellow students who has experience with us. But really be engaged in a conversation and be asking relevant questions where appropriate throughout. Don't sort of save them till the end, and that will help it be more of a conversation.
Great. And Joanna, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say it's a long interview process, right? It's a bunch of people moving from place to place and trying to maintain a good energy level and a good energy where you're glad to be there, you're making jokes with people, you're having fun. I think there's a stamina element that you need to keep in mind.
All great advice. So we've talked a little bit about some of the common interview pitfalls that come up, but are there any, standouts of things that really 1L should make sure they avoid in the interview process?
I can think of very horrible things that you should not do, or basic things you should not do. Throw away your gum before you go into the interview. Make sure you know how to pronounce the firm's name. I mean, there sort of it goes back to basics, but yeah, be professional. Yeah, common sense, and be professional.
Common sense professionalism. All right.
I think you stand out if you show that curiosity about the law and you demonstrate it. You've read an article or two, or you've been following some trend, and it doesn't have to be in every area of law. It could just be in a couple of things that are of interest to you. Maybe it's in regulation around bank finance. Maybe it's some other area related to kind of mass torts or antitrust, big cases. Just showing some knowledge that you're aware of some of the bigger trends that are happening in the news. And so if a student subscribes to a daily briefing from American Law Journal or National Law Journal, that's where you'll see those big headlines. And when you see something coming up repeatedly, it's a big deal, even if your professors perhaps aren't talking about it. Just awareness of what's happening in the market really makes for a standout candidate.
One more thing. Joanna mentioned this earlier, but people will say, is this somebody who I can put in front of a client? Is this somebody who, I could take to a client meeting? So you want to think about what you're saying in that light too. You don't want to overshare about personal details. And you want to be conscious, if you have worked in a legal setting in the past, you want to be conscious of confidentiality, if there's anything like that governs your work. But so you want to think about presenting yourself in that way. You're not making a friend, you're persuading somebody that you are going to be a good colleague. So you want to approach it with that perspective.
There are probably three things that I would say are completely common sense, but in the throes of some of your first law firm interviews or nervousness or anything like that, you could forget. So one thing, put your phone away, not answer it. There's nothing that's important that half day that you need to look at that while you're doing an interview, because your interviewer is looking straight at you, probably not responding to any emails during the time that they're spending with you. The other thing is really, really know your resume. I think I've had a couple of instances where I've asked about some experience or some little nugget on a resume, and the student was taken aback. They didn't really know what I was talking about. So really know your resume inside and out. And as you said, like if there's some nugget that you can provide about a job experience, or even if you've put down something as something that's a like of yours, we should make sure you should have some words to say about it if one of your interviewer asks. And for us at Latham, one of the most important things are you move from place to place when you're going from interview to interview. You come into contact with our staff, our IT people. It's always to be respectful to everybody. We've had people that have been rude to our receptionists and or our staff people, and we just will not really hire people that are like that, because it's not just that you save up your respect for the lawyers that you're meeting. It's really understanding that law firms don't work without everybody that's there, that's working there. So I think just being respectful to everybody that you meet during the course of the day, whether it's the recruiting assistant or the receptionist that lets you in, or the person who's from our copy room that holds the door open for you. I think that's super, super important as well.
All really great advice. All right, so I think we've just about covered everything. I have one last question to wrap this up. So is there any particular highlight of your firm's summer program that you would want to share with 1Ls to encourage them to apply to your firm this summer?
Besides the unbelievable opportunity to work at Latham? No. So I think one of our hallmark sort of events during the course of the summer is that every single one of our summer associates, which includes our 1L fellows, we fly them out to Beverly Hills and we do a training and socializing 3-day weekend out there in Beverly Hills, and you get to meet all of firm management while you're out there. So our CFO, our executive committee members, you also get to meet all of your summer associates from all over the world that are in your summer class. And it's a really nice way of getting to know the people at the firm at the very beginning. It's a great bonding experience, but it's also a great learning experience because you understand the various groups that are offered at the firm. You also get to understand our management style and what our finances are like. We get very, very transparent during this weekend. And it sets you up for when you're back at the firm, because these same people that you meet from the Chicago office or from our Singapore office, you'll be joined together with them again during your first year academy, your third year academy, and your fifth year academy. So it really does, create a network of people for you across the firm very early on in your career.
Great.
I'll add, at White & Case, we really pride ourselves on giving summer associates real work for real clients with real deadlines. Most matters have some global component. Typical assignments include writing briefs, motions, contracts, and client memoranda, assisting in drafting and negotiation sessions, and performing due diligence and transactions. In addition to substantive work, the summer program offers all summer associates the opportunity for formal and informal mentorship, weekly lunch trainings, informal and formal feedback and evaluations, really exciting pro bono work, and of course the usual fun social events that we spoil you with as a summer associate. We actually have a U.S. Summer Associate Conference, and we bring together all of our summer associates across our 6 offices, and it's a great time. So we pride ourselves on our just global footprint. So I cannot promise it, but sometimes if you have the language capability, there's also opportunities to travel to one of our overseas offices. We don't prohibit 1Ls from doing it. We have a 2L global mobility program, and a number of our summers spent time in Paris, in London, in Seoul, in Frankfurt. So if a 1L had a unique background that positioned them well to work on a matter in one of those offices, they wouldn't be prohibited from being considered for that type of opportunity.
Awesome.
I'll say that, you know, our summer program, Munger's not quite as big of an office or a law firm as White & Case or Latham, but our summer program for 1Ls is just like our summer program for 2Ls, which means, you know, we have lots of summer events. We're already in LA, so if you like Beverly Hills, you can go there. You can live there. You can go there every weekend. I don't. I live in San Francisco. Or if you like San Francisco, we have lovely weather up here too. But so you get all of those things about being a summer associate, a 1L or a 2L. You get client contact. You get the opportunity to do public interest work. You get, you know, to split your second half of your summer, whether it be with a client or public interest. But the thing that makes Munger really different is we're a one-to-one firm. And so we have a ratio of partners to associates that's 1-to-1. That means, you know, as a summer associate, it's 1-to-1 too. So you're going to be working not just with associates and maybe senior associates, but you're working directly with partners. You're working on really small case teams. Our case teams are, you know, maybe just 2 people or 3 people or sometimes 4 people. And so you really get to know the attorneys. I was a summer here, and they, you know, the attorneys that I met are now my colleagues. So you get to know the attorneys, and if it's a place you want to work at long term, it's a really sort of important investment in your future.
Great.
I would say our program is similar to the last 2, more like task focused. You'll be on real cases with real clients. And like was just mentioned, the first year and the second year programs are the same. And there's all those fun activities, and you meet, there's a lot of emphasis on meeting as many people, and that should be your emphasis anyways in your summers, to meet as many people as you can in the firm, because believe it or not, those are your clients for the first 10 years before you get real clients. And it's really great. I mean, we love having them. We get excited when you're here, and it's a lot of wonderful energy. So we love having you.
Great. Thank you all so much for joining us. We hope that this was helpful for everyone out there. If there's a topic you'd like to see Ms. JD chat about, leave it in the comments or get in touch with us on social media or at ms-jd.org. Big thank you to all of our panelists for joining us, and we'll sign off.